What up, folks? What's going on? Welcome to episode 84 of the Spun Today podcast. I'm your host, Tony Ortiz. Thank you very much for listening. If you'd like to help support the podcast in a way that will not cost you anything extra, you can do your shopping on Amazon like you normally do, but go through my affiliate link portal, which can be found at spuntoday.com/affiliate links. Click on the Amazon banner and do your shopping like you normally do. Again, it doesn't cost you anything extra, but it's a way that you can help support the show, and it's much appreciated. In this episode, I speak about the Netflix original show Ozark, Jeff Dunham's comedy special Relative Disaster, Jerry Seinfeld's comedy special Jerry Before Seinfeld, Def Comedy Jam 25, and watching a PBS documentary on Amazon Video called New York. New York. Nueva York. Alright, so I'm filming this episode a couple weeks in advance, actually, because I am going out to India. And I just recorded earlier today the episode that's being released on October 5th. And this one is the one that's going to be released on October 19th, but I am recording them in the same day. So if some catastrophic, crazy, wild shit happened in the past couple weeks, like Trump or Kim Jong-un blowing shit up, and I don't mention it in this episode, then that's why. As you guys are listening to this, somewhere in India, on the other side of the planet, and like I did the last couple times that I went there, I'll be recording an episode from there, at least one episode from there, just to tell you guys about the trip and the experience of just going over there. I like to be as detailed as possible with, I guess, dumb shit, but stuff that I find interesting. And if you guys do as well, then look forward to that episode coming up. Stuff like what did they serve on the plane and how the hotel is, and sightseeing shit that I did and stuff like that. Don't worry, it's no like boring work related stuff, just like the touristy shit. All right, so away we go. Ozarks is Netflix is off the hook. Awesome. I'm glad that Netflix exists at this particular time in my life, because if it was earlier, like high school, college times, I wouldn't have gotten absolutely dick done. I would have paid even less attention than I did throughout those years. And actually, come to think of it, maybe I would be more productive now without Netflix. So fuck you, Netflix. Anyway, it's a lot of dope shit, because it also like inspires me personally. Like, I see the level of like quality shows and the writing, and it gives me something to like strive towards. And it's just like creative as fuck and entertaining. So the show Ozarks is a Netflix original, and Jason Bateman's in it, who is one of my favorite actors, who was an actor like back in the day, I guess, like in the 80s, 90s maybe. And no one heard from him for a while, and then he started getting he became like a A-list actor like all over again, and getting roles left and right. And my wife told me about an article or something that she read, or an interview that she saw with him, that they addressed that. They were, because it was like, it's like I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but he took a hiatus, I guess, or not. I don't know. He wasn't a working actor for a while, and then starts getting all these roles. And they asked him like, what happened, what changed, and he pretty much said they stopped giving a shit and stopped taking it so seriously, and then roles started coming to him. Anyway, he's in the movie. In the show. He stars in it. And it's about this financial advisor that winds up getting involved with a Mexican drug cartel and washing their money. And he's a a really top-notch financial advisor and really good at what he does, and which is why the cartel pretty much chose him or whatever to provide that service. Anyway, in a twist of fate, shit hits the fan, and he winds up having to leave Chicago, where he's from, with his family. And the cartel like almost kills him and stuff, and the only way he lived was the him, you know, promising, giving his word to the cartel that he can wash even more of their money, and has a huge opportunity in the Ozarks. And it is, I don't know, I forget where it is. Minnesota? I don't remember, but it's like, if you've ever gone camping, it looks like that, like a campsite, like the entire town or whatever. And he, I don't know, convinces the cartels or the cartel guy that he deals with to buy his story, and then he starts figuring shit out when he gets there, buys himself some time. And throughout the whole show, he's always like one step ahead of the issue. Like, not one step ahead, that's not the right, kind of, he's kind of like half a step ahead, I would say, of like whatever issue he's dealing with. But then once he has it like reined in, like the issue, or once he has it taken care of, he gets hit with another problem and another problem and another, and it's like that, like constant, like back and forth the whole time. Like, he gets the money to the cartel, and then somebody extorts him, and then somebody robs him, and then he has to double up and get even more money. And then his source of washing the money, like the businesses that he started quote unquote investing in, so that he can like cook their books, and through their like wash money for the cartels, he gets discovered by one of them. And then it's like, it's a dope, interesting show. And you know, there's issues like within the family, the dynamic between like him and his wife, and cheating, and it's just, it's fast paced, and something that I really, really appreciated, that I thought was ballsy as hell, from the creators and writers on the show, was that it's a very suspenseful show, and it's exponentially more suspenseful because everything that you expect from one like scene or a string of sequences to the next, for the show to like build up to in suspense, and maybe like the whole show would be leading up to a specific moment, they would wind up doing it immediately. Like, one of the earlier, spoiler alert, by the way, fast forward like 2 or 3 minutes if you don't want to hear this, but one of the earlier episodes, he finds out, probably in like the first or second episode, he finds out about his wife cheating and stuff like that. So you as a watcher of the show, pretty much like at least what I anticipated was that, you know, he's either going to confront his wife or the dude that she's cheating with, and you know, that's going to be like the arc of the show, like playing up towards that, at least the B story. And in like the very next scene, or a scene or two, the guy that she's cheating on him with gets flung out of a penthouse window and splatters in the middle of the intersection of a street, like in front of him, when he's on his way to go confront the guy. And that happens because the cartel finds out about the whole infidelity thing, and that's a loose end type of nuisance for them, because they don't want people close to what they're involved with, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So it's like shit like that, that's like, what the fuck? You'd thought that would be like what the whole episode was going to be about. Instead, it's brought to the forefront. And what's dope about that is, and and so, something that I've heard said in stand-up comedy, and something also that Stephen King writes about in his book on writing, which is a concept of kill your darlings. So people have a tendency of, or creative people like writers or directors or whomever, have a tendency of, you know, when they have something good, like build up to that good thing, and that's it. Which I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but there's another mentality of killing your darlings. Like when you have something good, instead of building up to that good thing, don't do that good thing. Start from the point of what that good thing is, that good line, that good story arc, that good whatever, and then make that the starting point instead of the ending point. So then there on after, things just build up and get better and better and better. And I feel like the writers of the show did that a lot, because I felt like that, like, throughout the entire season. I felt like, oh shit, wait until the cartel finds this out, or oh damn, you know, do you think that the girl would ever tell him that she was gonna try to kill him, or get discovered about it, and then the girl just tells him herself? You know what I mean? Like crazy shit like that you don't expect to like happen, or if you expect it to happen, you expect it to happen like down the line, happens like immediately. Like you constantly feel like they gave away like the ending to the show, and it's like the show just started 15 minutes ago. How is it the ending? And it's an hour-long show. So then because of that, it just gets better and better, and like more plot twists and stuff like that happens just naturally, because since they don't build up to what that moment is that you think that they're building up to, and that moment happens half an hour early, they have to fill up the other half hour with other shit, right? So more and more and more stuff happens. Then I also liked that the way that they shot or showed overlapping scenes, and they did it a couple times. For example, there's a scene towards like the beginning of an episode that shows a little kid buying a gun at like a Walmart or whatever, and then you find out later like what the gun was for, etc., etc. But then towards a latter scene, it shows the Walmart again, and one of the other characters in the show purchasing something, and then you see the little kid that purchased the gun in the beginning of the show. You see him like in the background, so it shows you kind of like timeline wise, like what was going on earlier that day, even though like the scenes that played out afterwards, it shows you beforehand. I thought that was pretty cool. And then what else? There were a couple episodes that stood out to me, which was episode 6 and episode number 9. And I don't know, like I like those more. And I noticed that the writer for those 2 episodes, or the head writer, for those 2 episodes was Whit Anderson, which I believe is a female, from what I could find on IMDb. And she also worked on a show that I've always heard was good, but I like skipped it and didn't watch it. But she was like the executive story editor for Daredevil, which was on Netflix also, I think. But maybe I might go back and like watch that series and see, just from like the strength of really liking those 2 episodes and finding out that it was the same person that wrote it. So I wanna see more of their stuff. So check it out. It's called Ozark, and it's on Netflix. Speaking of Netflix, I saw a comedy special of Jeff Dunham. And Jeff Dunham, for those of you that don't know, is a comic that uses puppets. He does he's a ventriloquist, but does stand up comedy with them. And he's a like uber famous guy within that space. Definitely has that space cornered of like puppets and like not props, but well, I guess the puppets are technically props, but he doesn't just fuck with all different types of props. He just does some stand up comedy and uses the puppets to do so. He's not completely my cup of tea, but I have seen, this was like his second of his specials that I saw. Like the first time I saw him, I saw one of his specials. It was cool. It was different. I tried to see another one, but didn't like fully, because I kind of feels like, not that he's a bad comic or anything like that. He's funny. He's obviously talented at what he does. But I felt like, after seeing one, you kind of seen them all, kind of thing, which I know is not true for those of you that are, like big Jeff Dunham fans or anything like that. And it's no like slight against him. It's just whatever, my personal preference. But I saw this last one, and it was good also. But I still get that kind of, I like tuned back in mentally while watching it. Now, something that did stand out that I wanted to bring up on the podcast was the fact that, sometimes you find like your passion or like what you want to do like early in life, or you just will like wind up sticking to something, and it's awesome and it shows. And when you have that constant like work ethic, I think that's something that pays off in spades above all else. And he mentioned how he got like his first puppet or whatever when he was in the 3rd grade, and he just like really liked it, and he's literally been fucking with puppets and eventually stand-up comedy since the 3rd grade. He put himself through college. He paid for his college tuition by performing, doing stand-up, and he's 55 years old now. So it's like sick, from doing something from like when you're 3rd grade and like loving it and being that into it. Like, I admire that, and I think that's pretty dope. But if you haven't seen any of his stand-up, it was a good one. I would say check that one out. It's the latest one, the most current, and it's called Relative Disaster. His name is Jeff Dunham, and it's on Netflix. Speaking of work ethic, one of the work ethicsy motherfuckers that I know of is Jerry Seinfeld, which again is one of his most admirable qualities to me. He has a new, I told you guys some time ago that he got some like big deal from Netflix to do, I think it was 2 comedy specials, and this was one of them, and also to have comedians in cars getting coffee on Netflix as well. And Jerry's just the man to me. Like, I like his like the way he thinks, his objectivity, which is something that I think I get from a lot of comics. His candidness, the thoughtful approach to things, and the work ethic is insane. I loved Seinfeld, the show, his other stand-ups, and this one was particularly dope because although it's just a good time in terms of jokes and stand-up, it's more of a behind the scenes, which I love shit like that. It's more of like a behind the scenes into like the process of what creates him. He speaks about his first bits that worked, and he performed them on the first stage that he performed at, where they worked, and speaks about his decision to go into stand-up comedy when he left home in Long Island, and he rented a room somewhere, and he speaks about that, and just physically sitting on the corner of 5th Avenue and something else, and he sat there in this show, or the stand-up experience, I guess you could call it, because it's stand-up plus all this behind the scenes stuff that it cuts in and out from. And he says, this is the very spot that I was sitting in, X amount of years ago, before making the decision to do stand-up comedy. And I was kind of like 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Should I do it? Should I not? And decided to go for it. And the rest is history. And he speaks a lot about his childhood and his parents and his sister. Not a lot, but he speaks about them and growing up in Long Island, and always kind of sort of feeling out of place, but not like in a bad way, but just like he wanted to be somewhere else, or wanted to be like, I think he said like where the funny is, but everything was just like very vanilla where he grew up. What else? I like that. I like his like, he handwrites a lot, which I knew of him from other interviews, and he uses like the foolscap paper, like the yellow legal pad paper that Stephen Pressfield uses, by the way, to outline his stories. And he saves everything, and he saves them in like one of those accordion folders. And there's a particular scene where he's like sitting in the middle of a street and like lines the full street with all the like the sheets of paper that must have been like replicas or like fakes or photocopies or something. Because if that was all my shit, like all my fucking 50 years worth of writing, I wouldn't put it like in the street on the floor. I would think like it would like fly away or something. But it was just dope just to see that wealth of effort in the visually, and just how like you could tell like in that moment when he's like sitting Indian style in like the middle of all that, like that's his happy place, and you can connect with that. And that was pretty dope. And also I'm going to see him live in December with my wife towards the end of the year, so that's gonna be dope. It's gonna be at the Beacon Theater also, which is where we saw Jim Gaffigan, and we got decent seats, not as good as Gaffigan, but decent seats nonetheless. It's like orchestra, but more like towards the back of the theater. But I'll definitely let you guys know how that show kicks off. Def Comedy 25th year anniversary special is a 25-year anniversary special of Def Comedy Jam, which is on Netflix. And it was dope to see like that many like great comics united like that. And Def Comedy in particular has a dope history, a dope story, in that Russell Simmons and Stan Lathan, Russell Simmons, like the co-founder of Def Jam Records, saw, I forgot what show it was. He saw some stand-up, and he and Stan Lathan recognized that there was no like real outlet for black comics. And black comics that I've heard or have listened to like in interviews and stuff like that speak about doing the what they call the Chitlin circuit, which is all like a network of shows that black comics like normally do. And comedy now is like segregated in a way, but it's very, if you're a good comic, you're a good comic. But there's always like something in front of what the comic is, or what the comic is, but what the comic does. I think from like observing like the comic scene, it's like you're a dirty comic, or you're a clean comic, or you're a female comic, or you're a black comic, or you're a white comic. And that's like how we are as like a society, I guess, right? We segregate shit. And back then, anyway, the Russell Simmons and Stan Lathan realized that there's no like outlet for these black comics that they think are just as good or better than the white comics that they would see on like the Tonight Show, and that have like national platforms. So they put together Def Comedy as like a platform for them. and it was on HBO, if I'm not mistaken. Pretty sure it was HBO, and it was like literally the launching pad for a boatload of top tier comics. It was just guys like Dave Chappelle, Bernie Mac, Steve Harvey, Martin Lawrence, Kevin Hart, D.L. Hughley, Patrice O'Neal, Leslie Jones, Jamie Foxx, Chris Tucker, Tiffany Haddish was even on there, and I thought like that was Def Comedy was like past her time or whatever, or before her time rather. Some more, and it's like the list just goes on and on and on, and it was like an entertaining watch. Like, you know, just watching comedians are gonna be funny, even though they're not like doing stand up, but they're just funny, and they're like all like giving props to Russell and just Def Jam and the platform that like launched their careers and like paying homage, and they take turns, you know, like going on stage and like saying their piece. Cat Williams, another one, which Pimp Chronicles Part 1 is probably one of the most one of the best hours of all time. And I don't know, I just thought that like that aspect of it, that, you know, like the cream of the crop of like all these like hungry black comics was just like a dope thing that happened, and like a really cool story. They played clips from past shows and stuff like that, and like spoke about it, like reminisced on them, and it was really cool, man. So PBS put out a documentary that my brother put me onto called New York, and it's available on Amazon Video. So if you have like Amazon Prime or whatever, you can watch it for free. And if not, if you don't have Amazon Prime, you could probably like rent it on there or whatever. And I'm still going through it. I still haven't finished watching it. I'm on episode 5 or 6, I want to say. And I believe that there's 8 episodes, and each episode is like 2 hours long. So it's a dense stuff, but so good. It's not like boring dense. Well, if you're into like historical type shit, it's not boring, and if you're not, then it's probably boring as fuck. Like, I mentioned it to my wife, and to see like she wanted to watch, and like she almost threw up in her mouth, because it's not, you know, it's something that she's into, whatever. But I think it's so good, yo. It a couple things like resonated with me. Well, a lot of stuff resonated with me, but what I can think of now off the top of my head is things like stuff that you like don't really think of like on a regular basis, and that we kind of take for granted. Like they mentioned in the documentary that, you know, we see like a structure like the Brooklyn Bridge and just assume that it's always been there, but there was literally a time that it wasn't there. And I know that intellectually we understand that, but just like look at the New York skyline and think of it when none of that was there, or like when before the Brooklyn Bridge or the Manhattan Bridge or the 59th Street Bridge or like whatever. Like these like massive fucking structures and undertakings once didn't exist. And this documentary goes into the stories of, for example, how the Brooklyn Bridge was built, and how, you know, like Irish laborers and Italian bricklayers and engineers, like this one engineer was like known for being like the man at engineering, and he was like an older guy, and his son was following in his footsteps, and he got sick and died. And his son, he either got sick and died, or he died tragically or something like that. But then his son took over, you know, like calling the shots and like how to get this thing actually done, this massive thing that they had never thought of to do before. You know, built this massive structure now known as the Brooklyn Bridge that bridged the gap between the water gap between Brooklyn and Manhattan, which was, as it is now, the like main hub of New York City, like the main financial hub, the cultural hub, the just population hub as well, and really like the economic engine of New York and America at that time. And it tells you stories like that. It tells you stories of poets and writers like Walt Whitman, and how he captured, and they say they read a lot of his like poetry and writings, and how he captured and internalized New York, and how he spoke of boats that he was on and the crisp night air in New York, and etc., etc. It speaks about like the immigration waves, like when all the Irish people came, and after all the Dutch people came, and the Italians and the blacks, and how people like mingled and stuff like that, which is really interesting. What's really, really cool also is stuff like you find out who people were. Because, like, for example, I work on off of Fulton Street, downtown in the city. I don't know what the fuck Fulton means, you know, like what it was, what it is. And I found out through this documentary that it's Fulton Street is named after Robert Fulton, and he was an artist who liked to like draw and shit, and he also like inventing things and like tinkering with stuff. And he, in the early days, it was, you know, like Wild Wild West type of thing, you know, like people were like hustling, trying to get theirs. And he had, I don't know if it was like a sailboat or a fucking canoe or some shit, and he was making money like moving things on water, and or moving people, I think, on water from like Manhattan to Brooklyn or wherever, you know, somewhere. You know, he had some route that he would take, and he wound up inventing like a steamboat. He didn't like invent the steam engine. He just found an innovative way to like implement it. They compare him to like Henry Ford. That, you know, he didn't create the automobile, but he created the assembly line that just started like mass producing the automobile. So anyway, when he got like tired of like painting portraits and stuff like that, and he somehow or another built a steamboat and started a commercial service, you know, running shit with his steamboat. And he was said to be instrumental in transport and innovating how like quickly it was done through his steamboat, because the steam engine existed but not the application of it to the actual boat. And they say that he like pushed America into the Industrial Revolution age, you know, prior to dying in 1815 by this like innovative thing. And Fulton Street is named after that dude. And I found out like a bunch of stuff like that. The documentary shows video and footage and lots of photography from back then, from back in the day, and just like construction stuff like the Flatiron Building, which is like that triangle looking building. When that was built, when the Empire State Building was built, it goes into just like everything, politics, and like governors like Fiodoro LaGuardia, and Tammany Hall, which was like the Irish stronghold and like muscle behind their politics and politicians that they pushed. It goes into like racism and discrimination and wealth inequality and just like so much stuff. And then there's like outtakes of like interviews with historians and writers and stuff like that, and they add a lot of color and context to everything. There's actually a couple excerpts that I wanted to play for you guys that I jotted down, and I'm gonna play them now, but I honestly don't remember off the top of my head what the hell they were. or what they were about, just stuff that I thought was dope and that I liked. So I think I got like 2 or 3. And here goes the first one.
I do not marvel that 1 in 5 children in the rear tenement, into which the sunlight never comes, was killed by the house. It seemed strange, rather, that any survived. Jacob Reese.
Many of the tenements were life-threatening, literally. That is to say that the threat of disease, infectious bacterial diseases like dysentery, for example, was always there, and epidemics could spread rapidly. The high death rate, the high sickness rate. This was the reality for many, many hundreds of thousands, millions of New Yorkers in any given moment.
Ill-fed and ill-clothed, packed into buildings with few sinks or toilets, and sometimes with no plumbing at all. Tenement dwellers were prey to every kind of disease: diphtheria, influenza, typhoid, pneumonia. Worst of all was the disease called the White Plague, tuberculosis. Every year, 20,000 new cases were reported in the slums. Every year, 8,000 people died of the disease.
July and August spell death to the army of little ones, whom the doctor's skill is powerless to save. Sleepless mothers walk the street in the gray of the early dawn, trying to stir a cooling breeze to fan the brow of the sick baby. There is no sadder sight than this patient devotion against fearfully hopeless odds. Little coffins are stacked mountains high on the decks of the Charity Commissioner's boat when it makes its semi-weekly trip to the city cemetery. Jacob Reese.
How the Other Half Lives awakened New Yorkers to the condition of the poor, as nothing else had. It was a new way of seeing the world, a modern way, and Reese used it not only to underscore his outrage, but to spur people to action. The slums were not inevitable, he insisted. They had been built by men and women could change them.
One of the things that Reese is trying to do in this book, I think, is to get away from some of the older Victorian notions of poverty. Why are some people poor? Why do some people live in such terrible conditions? And his answer is more along the lines of a modern sort of environmental view of poverty. What he's basically arguing is that if people are going to live in these terrible tenements, if people are going to be deprived of the basics of light and air, and decency, we can't be surprised if these people become criminals or depraved or alcoholics or what have you. So that there's a way in which Reese is, I think, the opening shot, if you will, or the first chapter in a Reformed tradition, because it was a book that made a lot of people want to get involved in improving life in the city.
Not long after the book was published, New York's energetic young civil service commissioner, Theodore Roosevelt, called on Reese at his office on Printing House Square. The writer was out, but Roosevelt left his calling card with a note on the back. "I have read your book," it said, "and I have come to help."
I thought that was so dope because this writer, Jacob Reese, wrote a book called How the Other Half Lives. And if you watch this episode in its full context, like it shows how the income inequality was so exacerbated back then because you had like uber rich and then a boatload of the majority of people living in slums in New York City. And by uber rich, I mean like filthy, like grossly rich, and not grossly like it's a gross negative bad thing, but just like hugely like rich, like all those, like you see those like buildings that are like department buildings and shit like that now, like on Fifth Avenue and Madison Avenue and like the Gap and fucking Macy's or like whatever, like all those were like rich people mansions like back then. And this book like his writing, his observations of like what was going on, his objective like view of the situation, put into print. You know, like the power of words, the power of writing. It all revolves around writing, right? That got the attention of Theodore Roosevelt, who later went on to be a president of the United States and was known to be a reformer. And I just thought that was pretty cool. All right, let's check out the next clip.
I remember one time after the war, I was about 12. My father had a job in a factory across the way. And because he had lost his leg, he had a stump and a wooden artificial leg. And in the summer, and there's nothing quite as ferocious as a New York August, he would work on this assembly line 8 hours a day, and he was home that night, and I heard him weeping in the dark around 1 o'clock in the morning. And I knew that no matter what I ever did, I couldn't articulate it exactly, that I had to honor that pain, that you must honor that. And I think that's what the children of immigrants do, all of us. We know what they gave up. They gave up their countries. In some cases, they gave up their languages. They worked at the lousiest, rottenest jobs in order to put food on our tables. We have to honor that for the rest of our lives.
That was writer Pete Hamill. And as the son of an immigrant myself, I absolutely couldn't agree more. You know, when I just think of like how my parents came here and sacrifices that they made and have things that they've gone through to provide for their growing family a better life, you know, for me, my brother, and ultimately for our families, you know, their children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, etc. It's so selfless, so honorable to take a risk like that is for your betterment, but more so for the lasting impact of your extended family. Not extended family, your like family tree. Like that's just like something amazing that immigrants, especially in this country, coming to America, have been doing since the Dutch. At our core, like, that's what we are. That's what we're made up of. That audacity to hope for a better future and the tenacity to work hard and make it happen. And that's all I got for you folks this episode. So stick around and listen to some tunes and check out different ways you can help support the podcast. And I appreciate you guys for listening. Wish me a good flight back from India. Peace.
Hijo de inmigrantes rusos casado en Argentina con una pintora judía, se casa por segunda vez con una princesa africana en México. Música hindú contrabandeada por gitanos polacos se vuelve un éxito en el interior de Bolivia. Cebras africanas y canguros australianos en el zoológico de Londres. Momias egipcias y artefactos incas en el Museo de Nueva York. Linternas japonesas y chicles americanos en los bazares coreanos de San Pablo. Imágenes de un volcán en Filipinas salen en la red de televisión de Mozambique. La ra 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 la ra 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 la ra ra ra
Would you like to receive a short email from me once a week? You know that feeling you have on a Monday at work when you have absolutely nothing to look forward to except for lunch? Have no fear, the Midday Monday Boost letter is here. In this short weekly newsletter, you will receive 5 things. 1 is a photograph of the week from a photographer. a podcast of the week. I listen to tons of podcasts, dozens and dozens of podcasts, hundreds of episodes, and I cherry pick the best ones, and I share them with you here. You'll also receive a video of the week, which could be anything from a rap battle to a TED Talk. You receive a quote of the week, something to let marinate in your mind, and a word of the week, so that you and I can both step up our vocab. So if any of that sounds of interest to you, check it out. Check out the subscribe page at spuntoday.com/subscribe. Drop in your email address and you'll receive the very next one. For any writers or creatives out there, I have a questionnaire. It's a 5-question questionnaire that anyone is free to fill out. It's located at spuntoday.com/questionnaire. And what it is 5 open-ended questions related to your craft. It's things like what inspires you to write or create whenever you don't feel the inspiration to do so. What are your favorite apps or tools or tricks to trick yourself into getting into the mind state of actually creating? What inspires you, etc., stuff like that. And what I do with your responses is share them on a future episode of the podcast. Now, you can choose to remain anonymous. If you choose to, you have that option right there when you fill out the questionnaire. And if you do not choose to remain anonymous, I give you a shout out on the podcast and promote for free whatever it is that you have going on. So I appreciate you in advance for sharing that with me, as well as the rest of the listeners of the Spun Today podcast, which would stand to gain from you filling out the questionnaire. Now, you can help support the podcast in a myriad of ways. One way, which does not cost you anything and is most popular within the podcasting community, is by shopping on Amazon using my affiliate links banner. So the way that works is you go to spuntoday.com/affiliate links, or just click on the affiliate links tab at the top center of the page. And there you will see a banner for Amazon. You literally just click on that and it takes you to Amazon's website, where you do your shopping like you normally do. It does not cost you anything extra, but Amazon will give me a kickback just for driving traffic to their website. So that would be a big help. It literally costs you nothing extra financially, just costs you a couple of extra clicks of your mouse before you do your Amazon shopping. The iTunes banner that's on that same page works the same way. So if you're purchasing music or movies or whatever it is on iTunes, feel free to go through my affiliate link portal there as well. If you want to make a one-time PayPal donation, feel free to do so. There's a PayPal donation button on there as well. Within that same tab, you'll also find a link to the Spun Today Viral Style store. Now, the Viral Style store is a store where you can get Spun Today merch, whether it's a coffee mug or a t-shirt that I personally designed. And spoiler alert, I'm no Ralph Lauren or whoever designs Gucci stuff. But I did create the design of those shirts myself. I have a couple t-shirts on there. One that says, for example, "Right Need Every Day," which is a play off of Snoop, Dre, and Nate Dogg's "Smoke Weed Every Day." So it's "Right Need Every Day" with like a puff cloud of smoke behind it. I have a podcast versus everybody t-shirt and just stuff like that. So check it out. The link to the Viral Style store is also there. You can also help support the podcast on a reoccurring basis if you become a Patreon supporter. Now, Patreon is pretty cool, and there's a little video explanation of what it is and how it works, but I'll try to do my best to summarize it here. Basically, you sign on to Patreon, which is a free service, free account, and you can support not just myself, but any other podcasters or creatives that also have Patreon pages. And you can choose to, for example, donate $8 to them on a per episode basis. So the Spun Today podcast has 2 episodes a month. So if you donate $1 to it, it'll be $2 a month, basically. And you set it up, and it just happens automatically on a reoccurring basis. There are 0 fees. You can cancel at any time. No hassle, no bullshit. And it's a cool way to help support, and is much appreciated. And also, it's not just like for example, a PayPal donation. which is just that. But through Patreon, it allows the creator, in this case being myself, to set up a reward system, if you will. So if you donate $1 per episode, you are considered a tier 1 supporter. If you donate $3 per episode, you are a second tier supporter, etc., etc. And it goes up to 4 tiers. And each tier gets different things. Like tier 1 gets a free Spun Today bookmark and a shout out on the podcast. Tier 3 gets those 2 things from tier 1, as well as a free writing piece that's not posted on my website or available to anyone else, etc., etc. So check that out if you will, and visit my Patreon page at Patreon, patreon.com/Spun Today. Another great, amazing way to help support the podcast is to rate and review it. This costs you absolutely nothing. Whether you listen on iTunes, on Stitcher, on TuneIn, on iHeartRadio, on Pocket Casts, on Overcast, on Player FM, on Google Play, on YouTube, on Tumblr, or if you listen on Podbay or any other of your favorite podcast apps. Please rate and review the episode. It really is the number one way to help the show gain traction, gain exposure. You know, you could also share it with friends and family and tell them, check out what this idiot is saying. Some of it is actually pretty good. Or it all fucking sucks and you should listen and laugh. But as long as you're listening, it would be much appreciated. So rate and review the podcast wherever it is that you listen. Follow me on Twitter or on Instagram at Spun Today. Like the Facebook fan page at facebook.com/Spun Today. Subscribe to my YouTube page as well. All podcast episodes are available on YouTube, as well as clipped versions. For example, with the Random Rant episodes, I speak about a bunch of different topics instead of having the full episode alone, which is also available on YouTube. But you also have snippets of the different topics broken up into more digestible chunks. So check that out. You can also support by checking out my book, Make Way for You, Tips for Getting Out of Your Own Way. It's a quick short read if you're looking for some inspiration and motivation, and you can find out more about it at spuntoday.com/books. There you'll find a video of me telling you all how the book came to fruition, as well as a couple of audio excerpts. If you're interested, you can purchase it wherever books are sold: Kindle, iBooks, Kobo, in ebook or paperback format, which you can find on Amazon. Also, for being a Spun Today listener, I can also send you a free copy. Right there on that same landing page at spuntoday.com/books. Drop in your email address at the bottom of the page, and I'll shoot you over a copy in the format of your choice. And that's all I got, folks. Thanks again for checking out this episode. And as always, substitute the mysticism with hard work and start taking steps in the general direction of your dreams. Thanks for listening.